Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Women in Sectional Title webinar. First off the bat, I'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsors today, PCAF Octagon, We Connect You, and Sectional Title Solutions. We really appreciate your loyalty and strong support over the years. Secondly, huge congratulations to the National Association of Managing Agents in KwaZulu-Natal for their conference in Umhlanga last week. Outstanding, professional, productive, and I really have to say that every single speaker taught me something important. I also learned that a few of our women from Sectional Title, our managing agents, are pretty good on the dance floor. So if you're a managing agent, really affiliate yourself with the National Association of Managing Agents. It's a professional body. They're growing from strength to strength. And I think it's a good career move to learn, to go to their functions, to go to their workshops. It's important for all of us to learn and grow and share. And they do provide a platform for that. So thank you to them. So this month is October, and the month commemorates World Mental Health Day. And it creates a public awareness to spur on global priority of mental health. So the World Federation on Mental Health this year provided as their theme, mental health in the workplace. And I think there's no one more apt to speak about this particular subject than my guest, Joanna Kleovoulou. But before I introduce her formally, if we can enable the share screen in the background. So Joanna has got, holds a master's from the University of the Witwatersrand. She's a registered clinical psychologist in private practice. Her practice is here in Bedfordview, and it's called Psych Matters. She also has an honors degree in business management psychology, and she's contributed 2 chapters to a book called Improving Mental Health in the Workplace, and those 2 chapters relate to depression and burnout. What I love about Joanna is she's always ready to give back to the community and helps our victim support in Bedfordview, which is aligned to the police station. So it's phenomenal to have you on board here with us, Joanna. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. And I'm so in awe of so many people online today.
Excellent. Thank you. So, Joanna, we can talk about this. I don't know if you want to start by presenting, or I can say to you, from the point of view of managing agents and portfolio managers, most of you are online today. It's a stressful job. It's very easy to feel a little bit down in the dumps and depressed. But when can you see the actual symptoms of burnout, for example, in a situation where you're dealing with so much stress?
So when I was invited to the topic today, and it got me thinking about what does it mean to be a managing agent in a country like South Africa, Johannesburg. And it got me thinking about not only, as women, do we need to manage the spaces in our home front, we've got to manage the spaces that we're entering into other people's homes, and what conditions are we entering into? Just a side note, while I was doing my honors in psychology, I was working for my brother who had a real estate company, and I was helping him with the managing of the properties. And I was quite taken aback at the type of lifestyles people live in. What conditions are they living in? You're dealing with people going through a divorce. They talk about the 3 Ds: divorce, debt, and I can't remember the third one. Death, divorce, and debt. That's it. And we're dealing with people's emotions. They've invested so much in building up an asset base. We're in an environment where we're quite threatened. We've got high crime rates. And, how do we carry ourselves and our energy and show up in our workspaces, knowing that we've got all these variables we've got to carry? And, I had a chat with a friend of mine who is in real estate in Bloemfontein, and she says, Jo, the emotional toll that it takes on me as an estate agent, having to navigate the variables of the lawyers trying to make a quick buck. I mean, no offense to nobody here, but, trying to make a quick deal. And then you've got the variables of the law and the regulations and, a person's emotional state. How do I manage all of that? And it really got me thinking about, agents really being therapists in many ways, having to carry all of that. So if we think about what is burnout really is a state of energy. And the World Health Organization talks about it not in the spaces of home, but it's a work phenomenon. And it's the person's inability to manage the work output, and the symptoms that are related to that would be things like apathy, cynicism, negative work attitude, being very dissociated from your workspace, and your inability to function optimally, that eventually then leads to not being able to show up in your workspaces. So if you allow me to just show you, I've got a little presentation. I don't know if you can all see it.
Carry on.
Are you on?
No, it hasn't.
So, is it showing?
No.
Let me see. If you can just allow me to share.
I think we are trying.
It says it's not, it's not turned on from your side. But when we talk about, real estate and mental health, we think about, you're dealing with the emotionality and the retirement, and the income, people that, in this industry. Then we're talking about dealing with banks and lawyers and potholes and traffic and crime and harassment, and having to manage and being flexible with your own lives. Women, particularly in real estate, talking about fertility issues. I personally, I can share with you that during COVID, I tried my last attempt to having a baby during IVF while running my own business, having a child of my own, doing online schooling, and navigating family and adulting. So, as agents, you absorb all of this, and it does take its toll. So, what was quite interesting, I did some research on some of the statistics, and they talk about 60% of real estate agents have high stress rates, and 40% of real estate agents experience burnout. And it was a recent study. 2/3 of people working in the sector have been bothered by thoughts of self-harm and suicide. And that is quite scary. It's quite a high statistic. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Yael Geffen, who is a CEO of Sotheby's, and she's actually been a mental health advocate, and she speaks about her bipolar 2 disorder as a brilliant burden. It allows for her to be creative. It allows for her to bring her authenticity in as a leader into the workspace. And she talks about her mental health journey starting when she was 22, when she was in New York. And she felt extremely depressed and anxious and suicidal at times. And what she did was she sought help quite immediately. I mean, her sibling had died by suicide as well. And this took her on a journey of personal development. And so I think part of this conversation today, and I really want to thank you, Marina, is getting us to take the shame away from mental health, because we cannot separate mental health from physical health. And although I don't know you, Marina, I do see you at the park runs most Saturdays with a wave and a hello. And for me, it's a non-negotiable, making sure that I take care of my energy. I'm then able to be able to give back to my people that enter the space here. And I'm able to give back to my community, because it is about community. We work within a community. We grow up our children within a community. We care for our community by sharing with one another. So it's really, really vital to be able to take care of ourselves. It's not synonymous with being selfish. So I'm hoping today, the take home today for women particularly, self-care is often linked with feelings of, and I can ask the audience if they would be willing to share, what is their feeling that sits with self-care?
Yeah, we can put it in the chat if you look at that. It's probably sometimes guilt, maybe. I think that's probably one of the things, a lack of compassion. But I wanted to come back to what you said. So I don't know if the listeners will remember, there was a very big incident that happened at Spear Wine Farm, where the head of SEEF, I think it was at that stage, Sotheby's now, was arrested because he killed his wife at that function. And Yael Geffen was the youngest woman to take over the leadership of that position. And it's spelled Y-A-E-L, Yael Geffen, G-E-F-F-E-N. And as I remember Joanna, and she's very public about it, I think her mental health issues also came from sexual abuse as a youngster. And it's great if I follow her actually on Facebook. She's really, really gives me a lot of energy. And I think that if anybody's dealing with those kind of issues, unfortunately, they do manifest as well in later life and in the workplace. You know, a traumatic childhood. I know, for example, my mom had quite a traumatic childhood, and it manifested only, I think, when I was probably in my teens, you know, with depression. So these are things that we have to stare in the face and look at them and consider. And there's not one of us that I think, you know, remains unscathed.
Absolutely. You know, 1 in 3, they're saying by 2030, will be struggling with a known mental health illness. And women are 4 times more likely to suffer from depression and/or anxiety, PTSD and OCD, for example. But men are 4 times more likely to successfully, unfortunately, die by suicide. And, you know, the way that they die is often quite violent. So these are very real issues. And having platforms like this, I think, is just vital. And it starts to not only open up the gateway for sharing, but also in terms of support in the workspace. There was another incident now at Standard Bank. I'm not sure if your viewers are aware. I understand from doing my research, she was exhausted. She was struggling with burnout. And she went downstairs to grab a cup of coffee at the coffee shop, and she fell over the escalators.
Oh, the escalator. Oh gosh.
And so, you know, we take ourselves wherever we are. We take ourselves on a holiday, we take ourselves to the workspace, we take ourselves with our children, we take ourselves, you know, wherever we go. We carry ourselves wherever we go. So it's really important that we need to take a step back and pause and just reflect on, you know, the awareness of where am I? Where do I find myself? What is my energy saying about me? What are my illnesses? What feedback is it giving to me? My headaches, my stomach cramps, my eczema, big ailments, chronic illnesses. What are they actually telling me? I went to a seminar in Oxford recently. I was very, very privileged to be able to go. And I was quite fascinated at the amount of doctors, GPs and specialists that actually came, because they're now understanding that physical illness is not a separate entity. They're understanding that trauma is kept and scored in the body. And so they want to become a lot more trauma informed in the way that they understand treating patients. And so, you know, I would even take it a step further in the real estate space. How do we, and maybe me and you can, or the team can chat, how do we create a training program to help people like you entering very personal spaces handle and have empathy, but not take on and personalize what you're entering onto? I would imagine there's aggression. There are people that are angry, frustrated. They're going through an acrimonious divorce. How do you, and there are children involved. How do you separate all of that whilst trying to complete the deal and finding the best home?
Yeah, so Joanna, we're talking here to managing agents. So that it's in the property space, but so managing agent is a bit different from a real estate agent. And a managing agent will be managing the building. So they've got not only one trustee speaking to them every day, but probably, I don't know, you know, every day they're dealing with owners, they're dealing with trustees, you know, they're dealing with their own bosses as well, which can be a stress. And sometimes managing agents are running too many buildings. So they can be running, you know, 20 buildings at a time or 90 buildings at a time. And it's very, very hard. And I think that's the problem. So how do we prioritize mental health as women with all these things going on? It's all very easy, and it's quite easy to sort of give lip service to this whole mental health story. But it isn't really that easy. I mean, you're a mom, you work, you know, full time. Where does it come in? How do you do that? How do you balance it?
Okay, so thanks for clarifying that for me. And I wonder, just on that note, how would you try and get as many properties to get increased income with limiting the expense? But I mean, and then it really stretches you. But so I think it really is important to start off with awareness. And the more I can just pause in the day and understand practically that if I can just take a pause and just see what is my mood when I wake up in the morning. If I can't prioritize my physical health and just to take a dip in and understand where I am with myself, I'm not able to give of myself fully to anybody. And to practically start off, I talk about just 3 basic things: moving, what I'm munching, and how I sleep. We know that sleep is the first precursor to physical and mental disease or dis-ease. We know that if we're not sleeping properly, our immune system gets compromised, we're more prone to heart disease, we have higher inflammation rates, anxiety, depression, forgetfulness, attention deficit, and all those sorts of things. Aggression gets triggered. So if you can prioritize those 3 things from a physiological perspective, because we also understand, the mind is not separate from the body is not separate from our families, if you believe in a higher force, like our connection to source, perhaps, it's all interrelated, but it starts with awareness. So if you can get your sleep right as a step number 1 and prioritize your sleep hygiene, that would really, really be useful. And, there are lots of apps that you can follow in terms of mindful meditation or sleep, music for sleep or meditations for sleep. If you're struggling with insomnia, there's a thing called cognitive behavior for insomnia, for example, cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia. Your insomnia might be due to a physical illness or physical pain. So people struggling with chronic pain or back pain, or excessive worry and anxiety. It could be a secondary symptom of something physical or a secondary symptom of something like a bipolar disorder, a mood disorder. So it's really important, if you're not getting your sleep cycle right, you either go see somebody that's, depending on your value system, a homeopath, or you can start off with a homeopath, or you can go to a GP, you can see a psychologist, you can, a functional doctor, for example. So it's really important to address that. Lack of sleep is the precursor. So it's step number 1. Step number 2, we know that waking up 30 minutes before you start your day can have a profound impact. Harvard University did a study. If you can just pause for 3 minutes of your day before you actually get your day started, and just pausing and being mindful about what I experience in my body, how I'm breathing, what I envision for the day, can really set the tone before you just get up and work and get on mindlessly.
Can I intervene there as well and say that I find, I don't know if you've tried that 5 a.m. club, the book, I think that 5 a.m. club is a valuable thing. And what they talk about, what he talks about in that book, is that when you get up, you do 20 minutes of exercise, then you do 20 minutes of journaling or writing, reflecting, and then you do 20 minutes of learning. So, learning about something or listening to a podcast. And I have to say that works very well for me. I'm not every day, because it's a bit hard to get up at 5 every day, but that works very well.
Yes. And so if it means that you get your day started with an intention and a mood that actually sets the tone for the day, you will actually see that your time energy expands and you enter into the quantum field. And I know that, I'm sure many of you can relate. The busier we are, feels like time has just gone by so quickly, right? But as we just pause in the moment, you actually realize that you can actually get a lot more done, and you focus on one thing at a time, and you're completing your tasks. So, and again, it's also very personal for people. For some people, going and exercising after the day is done can get them into a deep sleep far better than going and exercising in the morning. I prefer the morning because it sets the tone and it just recalibrates my day. I mean, if you think about walking, for example, it's very much a left and right brain exercise. And if you think about the philosophers and the wise sayers of the world, right? They walked, and many of them walked barefoot or wear their sandals. But walking has got something to do with reintegrating the left and the right hemispheres of our brain. And obviously, it's got the natural high of releasing natural chemicals, and it's the most underestimated antidepressant there is. And so, if you can do 20 minutes of walking rather than no walking, or 10 minutes of movement rather than no movement, there's videos on, for example, office yoga. And I mean, there's a little exercise if your audience is willing to do it. But I mean, you could just stretch your hands out and you take your one hand and put it in the opposite direction and you just stretch your neck in that way. You can just literally feel the pull, right?
As long as I don't pull something. Don't pull anything if you haven't done exercise for ages. It's an indemnity. Excellent.
And so, again, notice, do you find your brain a lot more active in the morning and more productive in the morning? Or do you find that you're a lot more productive in the afternoon? What do you need to prioritize? Do you have kids that you need to get to, for example, and you want to be an involved parent? Excuse me? Or do you find yourself being a night owl and working better at night, provided that you're in a rhythm? I was seeing a professional sportsman, and I said to him, how did you become a professional sportsman in a country that doesn't really have the resources to punt your success? And he says, for me, it wasn't that I'm really good at what I do, but it's the consistency. It's in the consistency of me doing something repetitively over time. In that ritual, it got me to where I needed to go. And so
sorry to interrupt you. So I've got Sandy on the line here. She says she's got a rebounder at home and a quick 2-minute jump does help. So that gets the blood going, I assume. Then, Joanna, I've also got another lady who's directly messaged me saying that she enjoyed what you said about one's body holding trauma, and she's recommending a book called The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. The Body Keeps Score. That's the title of the book. Yeah. Sorry, you can carry on.
Yes, so The Body Keeps the Score. I was very fortunate to hear him actually at this talk. And so really, we can't escape our mental health, and that's what I'm saying. So it either shows itself up in the body, even, for example, we're recognizing cancers and heart disease. There's a very big link with stress and the cortisol. We even know that there's a woman called Dr. Robin Northrup, actually. She's a gynecologist, and she wrote a book called Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom. And I highly recommend that book as well. And she's written books on menopause, and she's moved away from the very conventional medicine. She's understanding that the body is an energy system. And how do we treat this body with love and care and self-compassion, that traumas like sexual abuse will show up in symptoms like, vaginismus, which is tightening of the vagina when there's intercourse, or infertility issues, for example, fertility issues. And so even perfectionism, for example, I know it's one of the questions you'd posed to me earlier. Perfectionism, although deemed as quite a revered characteristic, because it gets us to do things, and we're quite proud of the outcome of what we maintain in terms of our expectations of ourselves and others, and how we hold ourselves accountable. The downfall of that is, and often underneath the perfectionism, is the fear of losing control and the feeling of shame and fear, deep fear that sits there.
And how do you deal with it? How do you, as a managing agent, because I know a lot of my managing agent clients do try their best. They want to do well for every single person that comes in. You want to do your best job of work for everybody. But how do you deal with it? What would you need to tell yourself if you are a perfectionist in this space?
Sure. And I think so it's not about lowering your standard or lowering your goal, but it's about channeling your strengths in a way that enhances your life. And so, they talk about also the 80-20 principle, but what is my drawback? What is the pain in me pushing myself so hard? And so, what is the price I'm paying by pushing myself? Am I neglecting my family? Are my kids too afraid to come to me because I'm unapproachable? Or is my team too afraid to make mistakes because I'm at them for the littlest of errors? What kind of work climate am I creating or co-creating? If my team feels like this has to be a regimental system, where there's no room for error. And so, it's great that we can enhance efficiency and productivity and that we've got a standard that we uphold. But at what price? How's my body and my mind giving me feedback? And how can I have self-compassion? I think it's so important to know that we are doing the best that we can with the resources that we have, and to ask for support. I was once told by one of my executive coaches, do, dump, or delegate.
I like that. Absolutely. And isn't it also just putting things in perspective? Because in your mind, something can be so huge that you've got to get it done today. Then you step back and you think, you know what? This is self-imposed stress. Because at the end of the day, somebody can wait. I mean, we're not in an industry where anybody is going to die. I mean, as a lawyer, if I was a criminal attorney, or that could be seen in various ways, but if I was an attorney dealing with criminal law rather, and I had to get a client out of jail, I'm not a trauma surgeon at the end of the day. We're in the property space. Yes, there are urgent situations, but it's about placing things in perspective and then prioritizing, because then I think the day becomes easier to deal with, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we know that people with perfectionistic tendencies, they often find careers that often match that, like chartered accountants, for example, and people that are in the project management space. So it really serves them in terms of being super organized and having the right systems. But we also know that it triggers off severe ruminations and OCD, for example. And I mean, what worse than having to go to work and being bitten by your own strength trait? So you've got this thing biting at you in your head that you cannot let go of, and it's these thoughts that grip you. So it's really important to know when am I being helpful in the strength that I have in my trait, and when is it being my downfall or my demise?
Very, very, can be very harmful. We talked about self-compassion and self-care. And this is something I want to discuss, because a lot of the ladies that I deal with battle with this. They're always putting everyone else first. They're not thinking about their own self. Let's talk about that and how you deal with the guilt of looking after yourself.
Sure. So like we said earlier, often, self-care, and it often comes with gender and the gender roles and how society have conditioned us. I mean, I know, coming from a typical Cypriot Greek home, in our history of our ancestors, and I'm not sure if you can relate with me, Marina, but Cypriot women need to be everything to their partners and to their families, but often kind of get put on the bandwagon at the back end of the trail. So I sit with my mom. She's a great cook. She's a great businesswoman. She's always juggling a lot. But she often neglects to perhaps go do her hair or her nails, or self-care in terms of going for a walk and taking care of her body. And so what have we been conditioned to believe about self-care? What do we say when we receive, or how do we respond internally and externally when we receive gifts of affirmation through words or through gifting? How do we nurture and care for ourselves? It's so very important. What message are we then sending to our staff about self-care, or how we care for our staff top down. What message are we sending to our own children, whether you have sons or daughters? You know, how does mom show self-respect and self-regard, and not necessarily putting herself first, but ensuring that her cup is full and putting her oxygen mask on first, such that she can extend that same gift. And so when we think about guilt, and if your viewers and our viewers can just take a moment, and if I can take 5 minutes to do this exercise, I'd like for you all to think of a situation where you found it difficult to say no, or you felt guilty about saying no. And it could be something very personal for everybody. If you can just take a moment and think about an event or a situation. Okay. And if we think about what is the definition of guilt, we have guilt as part of our feelings rainbow because feelings are there to guide us and to repel us. So we have feelings we're also human, we would be robots otherwise, but we have guilt because it's there for, well, what would you say we have guilt for? Healthy guilt, Marina?
I think guilt, I think it can be something healthy because it leads us to act possibly in the correct way, you know, that you feel guilty.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure. So it keeps us on the moral road.
That's
It has a set of standards that we abide by. It keeps us from doing wrong things because it's morally incorrect, for example, right? So some guilt is healthy and it's wholesome, and it helps us to learn empathy for another and how our behavior impacts another. But too much guilt or no guilt becomes out of order, it becomes a disorder, right? So you don't want to be a psychopath or apathetic, because that also could be a sign of burnout, that I feel nothing, I care, I'm caring less, I've got no care in the world anymore because I'm so spent and so empty. Or I care too much, and that can also lead to burnout because I'm giving too much. So too much guilt or lopsided guilt is this lopsided perception that what I'm doing or not doing is causing harm on another. So I'm going to say that again. Excessive guilt is a lopsided perception that what I'm doing or not doing is causing harm on another. All right? And can I use me as an example? I have my mother doing my errand. My child runs 3 days a week. She helps me with my child. And initially, I felt guilty that I'm not that hands-on parent that's there for my kid every single afternoon. And then I asked myself, okay, here's the event, guilt for not being available to my kid in the afternoons. And then I said to myself, if we think about life and about energy, and energy always trying to find homeostasis in the quantum, and we look at nature always trying to find the homeostasis, right? Energy cannot be destroyed or lost. It can just be redirected. The gift in me not being there for my child, because in my mind, I'm causing her harm. I'm an absent parent. The gift in that was she's learning that she can rely on other people's support. She's learning that mom is a working mother and she loves what she does. She's learning to be independent. There's so many gifts in me not being there available to her every single day. She's learning not to be entitled to me. She's learning. So if you can do this exercise and come up with 25 reasons why the other person is benefiting from you not doing that thing for them, you will see that the neurological pathways will start to change and your relationship with guilt will start to shift. And it will actually expand your self-love and self-compassion.
That's valuable. I enjoyed that. Thank you. Very, very valuable. So, Joanna, we've got somebody who sent me a message now to say management in a workplace, plays a huge role for your mental health, and being able to reach out to your boss or to your manager is very important. And she says she finds that there's a huge lack of this in the management space, and I think it creates a lot of anxiety. So again, either I suppose you need to decide on what your priorities are, and maybe you can't afford to leave that job or whatever it is, but how do you deal with that practically? Because we can all say a lot of things, but practically, how would somebody sitting in their office now thinking, gosh, that's exactly the problem I've got. These managers are not good, or they're not helping me.
And I would wonder, being a manager or a CEO of a company or an owner of a company, the balancing act between having empathy for your employees and caring for employees, but not being taken advantage of, and the juxtaposition between being an employee and genuinely having a disorder, and then rather than using it as a ploy to get out of your responsibility. So how do we manage performance and absenteeism? How do we and performance and effectiveness in the workplace, and showing care and compassion. And so I think it really does start for me from top down. And if top down is not listening, how do we get the voices of the people from bottom up to say, look, there's a culture here that is showing up, that is disjointed about not feeling cared for. Someone has just died by suicide, or we've just heard of somebody that went into hospital for a mental health issue. How can we support them? How did this happen? What is showing up in our workspaces that is a common theme? So it could be or getting a protocol in place from top down to say, right, what can we do to show care and compassion? This was actually a bit of an oxymoron.
Sorry, Joanna, we can't hear you. I think there's a sound issue that you've got. Yeah, we're not hearing Joanna. I think the question, maybe she can come back on again. I'm not hearing her. She can leave and come back on. We've still got a couple of minutes, but I think the thing is that we need to understand how the workplace can better support, employees. And I know that the people sitting there will say, well, the management is what it is. At the end of the day, the bosses run the company. They might be unapproachable. But, for me, there's so much more awareness in the world about mental health and about what people go through. So I think it's important for maybe you to gain support of other people in your workplace who may feel the same. And then, then take it further and actually put something in writing about the way you feel and present it like a proper business plan, like a presentation. And maybe you can take it upon yourselves to move forward with it and to drive a mental health wellness program. And I think with women in sectional title, I think it's really important that we help with that. And it would be a dream of mine to actually be able to go from managing agency to managing agency, even with a Joanna, for example, and we run workshops and do things like that for the mental health of the sectional title management there. So I think, is Joanna back? Joanna, you back?
Yes, I'm back.
That's great. So with that, it would be great to run like a training program and go from managing agency to managing agency to work with people and allow them to talk. Because I think women also need to talk. We need to talk. So if you're sitting there today, now, let's take it, let's say it like it is. You're sitting at your desk now. You unhappy, you stressed, you may be having anxiety, you're definitely not sleeping well, you may be overweight, and you really don't like exercising, and you just feel stuck.
Yes.
How do we deal with that? I mean, I think the first thing is obviously sleep, but practically, how do you get unstuck? Do you need to speak to a professional?
Okay, so I think the first step is to recognize that you're not alone, and there's no shame in reaching out for help, because the lived experience of yourself is showing up as dissatisfaction. And no one No one deserves to feel unhappy and suffering unnecessarily. So, you could pop me an email, for example, or you can find out what resources there are out there. For example, the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, whom I am affiliated to, they are a national helpline number, and they have toll-free free counseling online, for example, and it's a national number. And they can actually guide you in terms of what resources you have. We also know now that medical aids are allowing for a 15-session motivation for depression, like clinical depression without psychosis. We know that acute stress reaction and postpartum depression as well. If you've got schizophrenia and bipolar 2, for example, those are chronic conditions that you can get from your medical aid. You're obligated, or the medical aid is obligated to give you 15 sessions. So if you're not aware of that, you speak to your broker, you speak to your medical aid, and a healthcare provider like a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist can fill in those forms for you, right? But start by reaching out. If you've got a problem with your weight and you don't feel comfortable with your weight, then start with a health consultant or a nutritionist, a dietitian, right? And it's all interrelated. I would also start with maybe getting some good bloods. I know, me being 49, it's pointless me going and doing a marathon and I'm struggling with my weight when in fact I've got perimenopause. So I need to find out what's going on with my hormones. And so know at what stage of your life you're at. If you're struggling with pains in your joints, maybe you've got arthritis or osteoarthritis. Maybe your circumstances and the way you're working, sitting at your desk for 8 hours is not working for you. Find ergonomically supportive spaces. Maybe standing up and working on a higher table, for example, can work. Maybe it means having a hybrid agreement with your boss. So it's really important, and it starts with, like I said, the self-awareness. What is my body and my mind showing up? What feedback are they giving me? We are not alone. There are helpline numbers. I'm happy to share it. I'm not sure why the sharing is not working. It's not turned on for some
maybe
reason.
you can give us do you have them available? Maybe
Yes,
you could
yes,
say them right
yes,
now, because I think it's
yes, I
important,
can.
Joanna.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure. So Psych Matters, we can be, you can email us. We've got the website www.psychmatters.co.za or info@psychmatters.coza. And then there's SADAG, the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. Let me just see if I can find their number. I do have it here somewhere. The toll-free number is 0800 567 567. And they've got a lot of resources as well. We've also got a lot of resources that you can read. Use your technology wisely. Sometimes do a detox with technology too. But we've got the resources, and there are resources. I know that, for example, the Edenvale Clinic has a psychologist once a month that comes free of charge. So the churches around our area have got counseling free of charge, and maybe it just starts with that step. If you're struggling with an addiction, your addiction is trying to give you feedback. There are non-profit as well as professional services out there, depending on your resources and your time.
Yeah, because often people think because they're financially constrained, they say, well, we can't go see a nutritionist because we don't have the money to pay for their consultations, but there's always a way. Please, if you are facing the situation in any way, reach out. You can reach out to Joanna. You can reach out to me. You can send me a message. We can find you help or support in various ways. But we have to look after ourselves to be able to better serve the communities that we operate in. And that's in the managing agent space, that's in your own life, in your own space. I definitely have found this very helpful. We've had a question about the 5 a.m. club. Go and have a look at the book. It's by Robin Sharma. Robin Sharma wrote the 5 a.m. club, and it just gives you a very good idea of how to kickstart your day. For the early birds, you can kickstart your day really well. I find it helpful. So let's hope that this has been useful to you. It's been invaluable to me. Thank you for your wisdom and your insights, Joanna. Appreciate it. And I know your heart is also good. There's also one thing I want you to tell the viewers, because you've personalized a whole space up in Linksfield. Is that right? Just tell us about that so that people can...
Sure. Before I
Yeah.
tell you about that quickly, we also run a free support group every second Saturday here in Bedfordview at South Matters, where people struggling with stress, anxiety, and depression can come for 1.5 to 2 hours and just share. So we do have that, and it's affiliated to SADAG. And if you're from another catchment area, phone SADAG and they will be able to provide you with other support groups in your area. So really, you just need to ask, and the help will arrive. So I've been so inspired. We bought a very old property in Linksfield Ridge that overlooks Johannesburg 360. You can see the jacarandas blooming. Mahatma Gandhi was in hiding there meditating. And we were gifted with this property that we weren't even at the auction. So for me, it was a miracle that that property landed with us. We put an offer in at an auction that didn't happen. And we have now changed a section of that property into a sanctuary. So today's sanctuary, where people can come and meditate, they can learn skills through self-care, healing, and through joyous activities like painting and art and so forth. We're running our next workshop on the Enneagram. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Enneagram, Marina.
Definitely, definitely. I love the
An author
Enneagram.
and coach is running it, so Janine Friedman. So if anyone is interested, I'm happy for them to pop us an email and we can take it from there.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so very much. We appreciate you. And we look forward to the next webinar next month. We're hurtling towards the end of the year, but yeah, take care, keep safe, and thank you for always supporting women.
And Marina, I see you. I see you, and I appreciate you too. I see what you do here for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Joanna. Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.